At a $0 balance, you are not a customer. You are a risk score with shoes. You are a warning light moving through the lobby. A small statistical problem, wearing a coat, holding a phone, rehearsing what to say before you reach the counter. The bank does not hate you. That would be too human. The bank does not feel anger when your card declines. It does not feel pity when your rent payment bounces. It does not care that the mistake was only $4, or that you were already choosing between coffee, gas, and groceries. The machine simply detects weakness. It sees a low balance, a late payment, a small miscalculation, and it responds with mathematical cruelty. A $4 mistake becomes a $35 overdraft fee. A failed charge becomes another failed charge. A penalty creates a shortage. The shortage creates another penalty. And very quickly, the person with the least money is paying the highest price for access to money. This is the first lesson of the banking machine. Scarcity is not just a condition, scarcity is a category. And once the system places you inside that category, the entire institution begins to treat you differently. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, clinically, automatically. You walk into a branch, and before you speak, the system has already spoken for you. Your balance has spoken. Your credit score has spoken. Your transaction history has spoken. Your missed payment from 6 months ago has spoken. Your overdraft from last Tuesday has spoken. And the person behind the counter may be polite. They may smile. They may even be kind. But they are not really seeing you first. They are seeing what the system has decided you are. At the bottom, you are a problem to be processed. You are not invited into the bank. You are managed by it. The phone menu does not hurry for you. The banker does not call back quickly. The fees do not disappear. The rules do not bend. There is no private room. No special line. No relationship manager. No direct number. No one says, "Let me see what I can do." Instead, they say, "Unfortunately, that is the policy." And policy is one of the coldest words in the modern world. Because policy allows a human being to perform cruelty without feeling responsible for it. The person at the counter did not create the fee. The representative on the phone did not design the algorithm. The branch manager did not personally decide that your mistake was worth $35. Everyone can point to something above them, the system, the rules, the computer, the policy, and so the machine collects. Not because you are dangerous, not because you are irresponsible, but because you are vulnerable enough to be charged. This is the paradox. The less money you have, the more expensive it becomes to exist inside the financial system. A person with millions can move money late and receive a phone call. A person with nothing moves money late and receives a penalty. One person gets a conversation. The other gets a charge. One person gets flexibility. The other gets consequences. And the strangest part is that the institution will often describe both experiences using the same language: service, customer care, financial support. But those words do not mean the same thing at every balance. At $0, service means containment. At $15,000, service begins to mean attention. At $80,000, service becomes defense. And at $25 million, service becomes architecture. The bank begins to reorganize itself around the person who can leave. This is the invisible truth of modern banking. Institutions do not treat everyone according to need. They treat people according to leverage, and leverage begins with the ability to walk away. At $0, you cannot walk away. Not really. You may hate the bank, but you still need an account. You still need direct deposit. You still need a debit card. You still need somewhere for your paycheck to land. Before rent, bills, fuel, and food carve it apart. You cannot negotiate because you have nothing the institution fears losing. So the relationship is not equal. It only looks equal from the outside. Two people enter the same branch. They stand under the same lights. They pass the same security guard. They walk across the same polished floor. But they are not entering the same building. One person enters as risk. Another enters as revenue. Another enters as an asset. And another enters as power. The building is the same. The reality is different. Now imagine the first person. They are standing in line after work. Their shoes are tired. Their phone battery is low. They have already checked the app 6 times, hoping the number might change, as if refreshing the screen could create money. They are not there. because they want luxury. They are not asking for an investment opportunity. They are asking why a fee was charged before a deposit cleared. They explain the timing. They explain that their paycheck came in a few hours late. They explain that the charge was small. They explain that they have children, or rent, or a car payment, or simply a life that cannot absorb another $35 blow. The teller listens. The teller types. The teller looks at the screen, and then comes the sentence. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. That sentence is not just an answer. It is a door closing. And behind that door is the full weight of the machine. The customer may feel shame, but the system feels nothing. The customer may feel panic, but the system feels nothing. The customer may walk out into the parking lot and sit in their car, calculating which bill can be delayed, but the system feels nothing. Because the machine has completed its function. It has extracted from the person least able to resist extraction. And then, somewhere else in the same city, inside a quieter branch, another customer walks in. This customer has $15,000 in the bank. Not rich, not free, not powerful, but no longer invisible. This is where the machine begins to soften. Not out of kindness, out of calculation. The fees begin to disappear. The offers begin to improve. The mail looks different. The envelopes become thicker. The ink becomes more elegant. The language becomes warmer. Suddenly, the bank wants a relationship, not a transaction. A relationship, that word matters, because at the bottom, you do not have a relationship with the bank. You have exposure to it, but once there is enough money in the account, the institution starts to speak as if it has discovered your humanity. You may receive a call. You may get assigned a relationship banker. Your questions may move through the system faster. Your small mistakes may be forgiven. Not always, but more often. The bank begins to treat you like someone worth keeping. And this creates a strange psychological moment because you realize something disturbing. The system always knew how to be polite. It always knew how to be flexible. It always knew how to remove fees. It always knew how to answer the phone. It always knew how to make the experience easier. It simply waited until you became profitable enough to deserve ease. This is where recognition arrives. But it is not warm recognition. It is not love. It is not respect in the moral sense. It is recognition as a revenue category. You are no longer just an account. You are a customer segment, a person with potential, someone who may need a mortgage later, someone who may open a brokerage account, someone who may carry a higher balance, someone who may be worth courting before another bank gets there first. And so, the tone changes. The same institution that once treated a $4 mistake like a moral failure now treats you like a developing opportunity. This is not a conspiracy. It is colder than a conspiracy. It is a business model. At this tier, the customer begins to feel the first hint of institutional warmth. But beneath that warmth is a question: why did dignity have a minimum balance? Why did respect require proof of profitability? Why did the door open only after there was enough money behind you? Then the number rises again, $80,000, maybe more, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe the early edge of serious assets. Now, the bank's behavior changes again. You are no longer just being courted, you are being defended. This is the world of preferred status, priority service, better credit offers, faster responses, and invisible guardrails. A mistake that would crush a low-balance customer becomes a minor inconvenience. A delay that would cause panic for one person becomes a quick phone call for another. A problem that would be handled by a call center becomes something a banker personally follows up on. The institution begins to place cushions around your life. You may not even notice them at first. That is how privilege often works, not as fireworks, as friction removed. The line is shorter, the hold time is shorter, the fee is waived, the rate is better, the approval is faster. The answer is more flexible. No one announces that reality has been reorganized. It simply becomes easier to move through. This is why wealth is not only about what you can buy. Wealth is about what stops happening to you. The emergency fees stop happening. The humiliating calls stop happening. The automated denials stop happening. The desperate explanations stop happening. The need to perform. Innocence in front of a stranger stops happening. You no longer have to prove that you are not a problem. The system has decided you are worth protecting. and that protection compounds. A better rate saves money. A waived fee preserves money. A faster approval creates opportunity. A personal banker prevents mistakes from becoming disasters. The person with money receives tools that help them keep and grow money. The person without money receives penalties that make recovery harder. Both are called financial services, but one is a ladder, the other is a treadmill. And this is where the machine reveals its deeper intelligence. It does not only respond to wealth, it helps reproduce it. It makes the stable more stable. It makes the vulnerable more vulnerable. It gives better terms to those least desperate for them. It gives harsher terms to those most in need of mercy. And then it calls the outcome personal responsibility. The wealthy customer is praised for good financial management. The poor customer is blamed for bad financial behavior. But the rules were never experienced equally. At one level, a mistake is a lesson. At another level, a mistake is a trap. At one level, a banker says, "Let's fix this." At another level, a representative says, "Unfortunately, this cannot be reversed." At one level, the system sees a future. At another level, the system sees a risk. And then comes the final transformation, $25 million. At this level, the word customer begins to feel too small. You are not simply using the bank. The bank is now competing to remain close to you. Your money is no longer just deposited. It is managed, studied, defended, and pursued. The relationship moves out of the ordinary branch and into private rooms, private calls, private events, private opportunities. You no longer have a banker in the usual sense. You have a team, a wealth manager, a tax strategist, an estate planner, a lending specialist, an investment advisor, maybe access to private deals, maybe access to institutional research, maybe a chief investment officer willing to fly to your location and explain emerging markets, risk exposure, and capital allocation. This is not service anymore. This is choreography. The bank arranges people, products, rates, and attention around the preservation of your relationship. At $0, the institution asks, "How do we limit our risk?" At $25 million, the institution asks, "How do we keep them happy?" At $0, your life bends around the bank's rules. At $25 million, the bank's rules bend around your life. The difference is not subtle, it is civilizational. This is the tier where you discover that many rules are not really rules, they are price tags. Rules are rigid when the customer has no leverage. Rules become flexible when the customer can move millions to another institution. The fee can be waived, the rate can be negotiated, the product can be customized, the meeting can be arranged, the exception can be made, the timeline can be accelerated. The person who was told that is impossible was not always asking for the impossible. They were asking from the wrong balance. This is one of the most unsettling truths about systems. They often present themselves as neutral because neutrality sounds moral. But systems are rarely neutral in practice. They are responsive to power, and money is one of the most efficient forms of power ever created. Money speaks before you. Enter the room, money edits the tone of the conversation. Money changes how mistakes are interpreted. Money changes whether a person is seen as irresponsible or temporarily inconvenienced. Money changes whether the system punishes, assists, courts, or obeys. At the top, you are not just receiving different treatment, you are participating in the design of treatment itself. Banks create products for people like you. They adjust offerings around people like you. They study your behavior. They compete for your trust. Your preferences become data that shapes institutional strategy. Your dissatisfaction becomes urgent. Your departure becomes a threat. You are no longer standing outside the machine, hoping it will process you gently. You are one of the forces telling the machine where to turn. And this creates a strange psychological state. At first, wealth feels like comfort, then it feels like safety, then it feels like access. But eventually, at a high enough level, it begins to feel like influence. You realize that the world is not made of solid walls, it is made of doors, and many of those doors open quietly when the right name, number, or account balance appears. The person at the bottom experiences society as a maze of locked gates. The person at the top experiences society as a series of conversations. That is the difference. Not intelligence, not virtue, Not effort alone, leverage. When you have no leverage, systems explain themselves to you as if they are weather. You cannot negotiate with rain, you cannot appeal to gravity, you cannot ask the storm to reconsider. This is how institutions feel to the poor: huge, cold, automatic, unchangeable. But when you have leverage, the weather becomes staff. Suddenly, someone can check, someone can call, someone can escalate, someone can make an exception, someone can speak to the committee, someone can bring in the regional manager, someone can arrange a meeting, someone can do what everyone previously said could not be done, and once you see this, you cannot unsee it. You realize the machine was never equally mechanical for everyone. It was mechanical for those without power, human for those with value, and deeply personal for those with influence. This is why the banking machine matters beyond banking, because banking is only one visible example of a larger reality. Airports work this way. Hospitals work this way. Universities work this way. Legal systems work this way. Real estate works this way. Luxury. Retail works this way. Even attention works this way. At the bottom, people are sorted, delayed, and processed. At the top, people are recognized, protected, and consulted. Modern society tells us we are all individuals, but institutions often experience us as categories: risk category, income category, credit category, client category, asset category, influence category, and each category comes with a different reality, a different tone of voice, a different waiting time, a different explanation, a different version of the rules. This does not mean individual choices do not matter. They do. Discipline matters. Skill matters. Planning matters. Work matters. But it is dishonest to pretend that everyone is playing the same game on the same board. Some people are climbing out of holes while being charged for the shovel. Others are walking on polished floors with a guide waiting at the elevator. The banking machine does not create every inequality, but it reveals inequality with unusual honesty. Because money is its native language, the bank does not need to pretend for long. It shows you exactly who you are to it, not who you are as a person, not who you are to your family, not your courage, not your kindness, not your suffering, not your potential, only your financial usefulness. And the higher your usefulness, the more human the institution becomes. That is the terrifying part. Not that rich people get better service. Everyone knows that. The terrifying part is that the better service proves something. It proves the system was always capable of patience, always capable of flexibility, always capable of speed, always capable of politeness, always capable of removing friction, always capable of listening. It simply rationed those things according to profitability. So when the poor are told that harsh treatment is necessary, we should ask a simple question: necessary for whom? When a fee cannot be reversed for someone with $8 in the account, but can be quietly waived for someone with 80,000, the issue is not possibility, it is priority. When one customer is trapped in a phone tree and another has a direct number, the issue is not technology, it is allocation. When one person's mistake becomes punishment and another person's mistake becomes a conversation, the issue is not fairness, it is power. This is the machine. Not a villain in a dark room, not a single banker laughing behind a desk, not one evil executive pulling a lever. The machine is more ordinary than that. It is policies, algorithms, incentives, risk models, customer segmentation, profit targets, retention strategies, service tiers. It is thousands of ordinary decisions arranged into a structure that feels inevitable. And because it feels inevitable, people stop questioning it. The low-balance customer blames themselves. They say, I should have been more careful, and maybe they should have, but the wealthy customer also makes mistakes. The difference is that their mistakes land on cushions. The poor person's mistake lands on concrete. That is what wealth buys first, not yachts, not watches, not private jets, cushions, the soft landing, the second chance, the quiet correction, the person who answers, the rule that bends, the time to recover. And once you understand that, you understand why poverty is so exhausting. Poverty is not only the absence of money, it is the absence of margin. No margin for timing errors. No margin for sickness. No margin for a delayed paycheck. No margin for a broken tire. no margin for a bank fee, no margin for being human. The machine punishes people not only for failure, but for lacking enough distance from failure. Meanwhile, wealth creates distance. Distance between mistake and disaster. Distance between delay and collapse. Distance between embarrassment and survival. Distance between a bad week and a ruined year. And the banking machine measures that distance constantly. It knows who has room to breathe. It knows who does not. Then it charges accordingly. There is something almost poetic in the cruelty of it. The person with no money must pay more to access money. The person with abundant money is offered cheaper money. The person desperate for credit receives the harshest terms. The person who barely needs credit receives the best terms. The person who needs a callback waits. The person who might move assets gets called first. And all of this is described as rational. From the bank's perspective, it is rational. That is the problem. A system can be rational and still be brutal. A machine can be efficient and still be unjust. A policy can be profitable and still be corrosive to human dignity. The question is not whether the bank has reasons. The question is what kind of world those reasons create. Because over time, treatment becomes identity. If every institution treats you like a risk, you begin to carry yourself like one. You become careful in a way that looks like fear. You rehearse explanations before conversations. You avoid asking questions because you expect humiliation. You delay opening emails. You stop answering unknown numbers. You feel your body tense before checking your balance. The machine moves inside you. It becomes a voice, a posture, a way of shrinking before anyone has spoken. And at the other end, the opposite happens. If every institution treats you like a priority, you begin to expect responsiveness. You ask directly. You negotiate naturally. You assume someone can help. You do not feel lucky when the call is returned. You feel normal. That is another hidden advantage of wealth. It trains expectation. The wealthy are not only given better treatment, they are trained by repeated experience to expect better treatment. The poor are not only given worse treatment, they are trained by repeated experience to expect denial. This matters because confidence is not created in isolation. Confidence is often the memory of systems saying yes, and caution is often the memory of systems saying no. So when we talk about banking, we are also talking about psychology. We are talking about who gets to feel legitimate, who gets to feel temporary difficulty instead of permanent failure, who gets to feel like a client instead of a case, who gets to feel like a partner instead of a problem. At $25 million, the bank does not merely protect your money, it protects your sense of importance. It confirms your agency. It mirrors your power back to you. People prepare before meeting you. Documents are arranged. Rooms are ready. Names are remembered. Options are presented. Your concerns are treated as strategic. Your preferences are treated as meaningful. Your time is treated as expensive. And after enough of this, influence begins to feel natural. Not extraordinary, natural. This is how hierarchy reproduces itself quietly, not only through numbers on a screen, but through daily interactions that teach some people to expand and others to contract. The banking machine does not just manage accounts, it manages human posture. It teaches the poor to apologize. It teaches the comfortable to compare. It teaches the wealthy to choose. It teaches the ultra-rich to command, and it does this without needing to announce itself. It is hidden in the tone of a phone call, the speed of an email, the presence or absence of a fee, the difference between a locked door and a private invitation. At the beginning, we said that at $0, you are a risk score with shoes, but maybe the deeper truth is this. At every level, the machine gives you a different body. At the bottom, your body is tired. You carry fatigue, hunger, and the fear of one more penalty. You perform fullness while running on empty. You smile at the teller because you cannot afford to look angry. You explain yourself calmly because desperation must remain polite to be taken seriously. At the middle, your body begins to straighten. You notice that people respond faster. You notice that the offers improve. You notice that the same institution now seems slightly more interested in your comfort. You feel recognized, but not loved. At the upper tier, your body relaxes. There are guardrails now. Your mistakes do not immediately become emergencies. The system has begun to absorb shocks for you. You move differently because reality pushes back less, and at the highest tier, your body becomes expansive. You do not simply enter rooms. Rooms prepare for you. You do not ask whether the bank can help. You ask what the bank can offer. You are no longer processed by the institution. You are part of the reason the institution reorganizes itself. This is not a story about envy. It is a story about revelation. Because the banking machine shows us what society often hides. It shows us that dignity is frequently distributed as a premium service. It shows us that humanity is recognized faster when backed by assets. It shows us that rules are firmest against those with the least power to challenge them, and it shows us that the systems calling themselves neutral are often deeply responsive to hierarchy. The final question is not whether rich people should receive good service. The final question is why good service must be rationed like luxury, why patience is treated as a perk, why flexibility is treated as a reward, why the people most vulnerable to collapse are often given the least margin, why the person with $25 million receives a team while the person with $25 receives a penalty. Because the most terrifying thing about the banking machine is not that it treats the poor badly. It is that at every higher tier, it proves better treatment was always possible. The phone could be answered. The fee could be waived. The rule could bend. The human being could be seen. The machine knew how to soften. It simply waited for enough money to make softness profitable. And that is how capital reorganizes reality. Not all. At once. Not with a speech. Not with a law carved into stone. But quietly. Through doors that open for some and stay invisible to others. Through voices that warm as balances rise. Through penalties that disappear when they no longer matter. Through rooms prepared for those who can leave. And through policies enforced most rigidly against those who cannot. At $0, you meet the machine. At $15,000, the machine begins to smile. At $80,000, the machine begins to protect you. And at $25 million, the machine asks what kind of world you would like it to build around you. That is the banking machine. And once you understand it, you begin to see the same pattern